Today I'm speaking with Professor and Dr. Rainer.Spanagel. He's a professor of psychopharmacology at the Central Institute of Mental Health of Heidelberg University, where he's also a director of the Institute of Psychopharmacology. Basically, the institute centers on the animal, experimental, and translational research of alcohol and drug addiction. Dr. Spanagel also studies how addictive behavior can occur with other psychiatric disorders, specifically anxiety, depression, or ADHD. So he's also one of the authors of Behavioral Neurobiology of Alcohol Addiction. So thank you so much, Doctor, for stopping by today and giving us your time.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward for a discussion on the topic of alcohol addiction, a topic that will be not only a topic of today, it will be also a topic of the next decades. I don't think that 2.2 billion people drink alcohol, so that will not stop. And the problems with this 2.2 billion people drinking alcohol will continue. So it is a topic that is of common interest.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about this because I stopped drinking 11 months ago and I haven't had a drink, cigarette, or any drug for 11 months and I feel great. So I think today's world is overstimulated with any of these things. And I see the benefits, of course, of not engaging in any of those, let's say things. So maybe can you first break it down? Let's talk about specifically alcohol. When would you consider that somebody is actually addicted to alcohol? And when would you say it's harmless? Like, let's say most of the people I know, they just drink, but who would you say is kind of addicted? When is that line breaking?
First of all, drinking alcohol is not harmless. It comes always with a health risk, even if you drink small amounts. We're not talking only about the problem of becoming addicted to alcohol. There are many, many other diseases that are linked, causally linked to alcohol, talking about cancers, cardiovascular diseases, immune-related diseases. You just name it. There are at least 60 disease groups and 220 different diseases that are linked to alcohol consumption. And even low amounts of alcohol consumption are not good for your health. So congrats on stopping drinking alcohol for the last 12 or 11 months. But, people will continue to drink alcohol. And it has also it has a lot of, it is deeply embedded into our culture. It helps a lot for our social interactions. So it became a habit for many, many people out of many different reasons. So just to be clear about, drinking alcohol is not good for your health. So even small amounts are not good.
So small amount could be like, let's say 1 or 2 beers a day. Is this a small amount, or what is the small amount, let's say?
You would consider already what you said, a one or two beers, what most people consider as a small amount, not as moderate. And that is already a problem. I know that a cardiologist is having still this data set in mind that low amounts of alcohol can have a protective effect on several cardiovascular risks, which is such a small window of positive opportunity, and that's very individual. You cannot find this for an entire population. Therefore, I think it would be not a good message to say, hey, if you drink just 1 beer per day, everything is fine. I don't like these recommendations that are given on national levels from the health ministry of any country, and it is not harmonized within Europe. It is not harmonized over the entire globe. So you will have hundreds of different recommendations. We have, even in Spain, we have 12 different recommendations from health authorities on how much you should drink to stay healthy. So I think we should stop giving these advice. We should just say, hey, it comes always with the risk. If you want to take it, fine. But we cannot tell you if you drink just one glass of beer every day, that this would be good for your health. Now, it is clearly different that if you go into excessive drinking patterns that lead in some individuals to an addictive behavior. This is a different story. I mean, certainly this requires different drinking behavior and patterns over a long time. And then what can happen is that usually you are the master of your activities, of your behavior. You control your behavior, hopefully to a good degree. But what happens if you get addicted to alcohol? The control is taken over by alcohol. Alcohol dictates your life. Alcohol will tell you what you have to do next. Alcohol will tell you, hey, I do have 2 small babies at home, but I have nothing to drink in the fridge, and I have to get to the next gas station 10 miles away. And I just sit into the car and I get my drinks. You would usually not do that if you don't have a problem. If you have a problem and if alcohol dictates your life, you will sit in the car, you will get your drinks, you will get drunken. So I think that's the best definition, that alcohol is taking over control and you are not the master anymore of your own activities. If you have reached such a level of loss of control, you definitely have a problem, and you should consider the possibility that you should get into treatment. That's a long way, because you have to be convinced, you have to be self-motivated, and you have to realize that you do have a problem, and that this then brings you to treatment.
Do you think we have a problem as Europeans in our culture sometimes, that alcohol is viewed as something completely normal? And especially from young age, I remember when I was 10, I already got a beer from my grandfather, and it continued until I was 29. So I couldn't get out of that cycle, especially during high school and university. It kind of speeds up, everybody's drinking. It's kind of like, that's where you develop, I think, these binge drinking habits, that every weekend you go out and you drink excessively. So do you think this is like part of our culture, and it's, I don't know how it developed, but do you think it's accepted by everybody? It's not strange to come home drunk to your mom, let's say, but it's kind of strange if you look at it maybe from someone from other culture, like they might not understand why we're doing this. So what do you think about like culture of Europeans and the alcohol, I don't know, related to it, like?
Oh yeah, I mean, as I already mentioned, alcohol drinking, that's deeply embedded into our culture, and this since centuries. So we have to look into a long history of drinking habits in European populations, and this certainly is the main driver, because it is completely accepted. There is availability 24 hours in each city. You can get alcohol whenever you want to buy it. You will find it everywhere. You will find it almost in each household, in each shop you go just for shopping. And then alcohol is from hundreds of different wine to spirits, Everything is available all the time. Availability is a huge problem. And it's also a huge problem for our kids, because our kids, they grow up in a environment where it is just normal that the parents, friends of the parents, drink alcohol as soon as one has a dinner together, or that the parents, even within the family, drink alcohol. So what should a 12 years old son or daughter say? Hey, my parents are doing this all the time. Why should I not do it? I just see this with my son. He is 12 years old, and he's now looking. We have this very nice bar in the kitchen with different really excellent, outstanding spirits from all over the world. I love to drink sometimes, just a little bit. And I do drink alcohol, yes. And my son is saying, hey, I want to try this. So what can I tell him? You should not. I know about the consequences. And he is saying, yeah, you know about the consequences, but you do it. Yeah. So how can you convince the young generation? How can you convince our kids if it is all the time available, and if we as parents, as adults, are doing it all the time? So it is an endless cycle from generation to generation, and this is really hard to break. And it is part of our culture. So you don't want to break up with your culture, you know. So this is why I think it is very difficult to change this behavior.
Do you think, of course, some people will say, well, there are positive things when it comes to alcohol because you can be social more and maybe open to people or something, but there's a tremendous cost on society. Just look at the number of car accidents that happen when drunk driving. Most people are in under alcohol influence when they are doing this, or look at the fights, or how would I say this, domestic abuse in families. When people drink alcohol, they more likely abuse someone, or any sort of crime is usually related to some sort of drug consumption, usually alcohol. So there's also like this heavy cost on society, that it's not about individual freedom, but it's the cost on society at this point. So do you think the negatives of alcohol outweigh the benefit overall, if you look at it from like society perspective, on the health perspective of individual, or what would you say is maybe the positive side?
I mean, certainly the socioeconomic costs are enormous. There are different calculations. Just for to give you one example, one calculation for the socio-health economic costs in Germany amount to 86 billion euros per year because of harmful effects of alcohol. That includes not only all accidents in households or car driving or in any other activity. What you should not forget, the highest costs usually come with that if people do drink alcohol, they often go not to work the day after. And these are enormous costs which should not be underestimated. And then we have all the associated health problems and comorbidities that come with enormous costs, health costs. So clearly, we do have this huge amount of socio-economic health costs. And what do we put into the balance here in terms of positive effects? You could say, yeah, it is a culture, it is part of our culture. Culture is important for the identity of a population, and it works as glue. It really helps to bring a population together. Yeah, that's important. We are defining ourselves by our culture. So if you take the alcohol away, we are losing definitely one part of our culture.
As a solution, it seems like there are like three options. Well, not three, maybe more, but one is to not drink at all. But I think this is unrealistic for most people because, you know, when I go to my family now, they all drink. I don't, I look weird, even though it's not weird. It's actually what's healthy, but I'm out of my culture. Technically, I can't hang out with my friends. I can't do much because I don't drink. So that's, I think people will have problems with this. The second is to do what you do, where you have like sort of small habits of drinking or preventative, I don't know how to call this, where you just drink with like limit, or then to, is there another option? Like how would you, if someone wants to change, let's say they have a problem, I don't know, and what scale, what would be your advice to them as like a solution to, you know,
Um,
let's say they are
I
not
mean,
like addicted to
sure,
completely, but just regular alcohol consumption.
the regular alcohol consumption, and a lot of people are always afraid of their regular alcohol consumption. They ask me, other experts, is this still okay? Will I develop a problem? And it is really an individual history always behind it. And this is important to know what is a history. And what is also important to know is the age. I mean, alcohol at a younger age is much better tolerated by the system on all levels, by the brain, by each organ, than in the elderly. As older you get, as more problems you have from alcohol drinking, and you recover not that fast and that easy anymore. So it is here a lot of factors come into the game, and you have to make this decision always on an individual level. I mean, if I look on my drinking history over the last decades, I mean, it changed. These days, I just got 60. I drink in a very, very controlled manner. I really determine by myself when I want to drink. And there are very rare occasions where I would drink more than I would like to drink. So it's very controlled. That was also different 20 years ago. Yeah? So there is this age adjustment. It is also your life situation where you are in. If you are having a real pronounced adverse life event, your partner has cancer, may die, what will how will your alcohol drinking behavior develop? It can easily go then into an excessive state, and into a dangerous state. So to make this more clear, I think you cannot give here an advice on for everyone. It is a bit individual, and you have to find it out by yourself. The good thing is that usually we are all very experienced over many years. We developed specific alcohol drinking behaviors and we know about the effects of alcohol. And so we can judge a bit on it. Everyone by him or herself can judge on it, as you did, where you said, hey, I just wanted to break the cycle and I stopped now drinking. So it's a very individual decision, and it's not easy to make here a very general advice.
Yeah.
But clearly, there are dangerous drinking patterns. The most dangerous drinking pattern is, for example, the Scandinavian one in Norway, Sweden, where usually you do not drink during weekdays, not in families, but you really load up on weekends. And so this is this going to heavy intoxication and binge drinking patterns for just a few days and then staying in abstinence for the next 5 days. This is a very, very dangerous pattern. It's repetitive, non-drinking and binge drinking. It's probably the most dangerous drinking you can do. And it is interesting to see that this is reflected by the numbers, because the overall alcohol intake population-wide in Norway or Sweden compared to Germany, France is very low. But they have a very high rate of problems with alcohol dependence, addiction. So this relates to their specific drinking pattern. So this is something that should be considered, that this sometimes drinking a lot is dangerous.
Yeah. Here in Czech Republic, people drink like 3 beers a day with like at lunch in the office, like it's completely normal. It's like you can go for lunch with your boss and have beers and it's not like strange. And in some countries it's strange. So yeah, I don't know if Germany is same, but I guess.
Yeah, the German drinking behavior is also a bit more on the regular side. So people have this tendency that they drink a little bit each day, and not so much the pronounced binge drinking. Nevertheless, I mean, we just made a so-called real-life study at 3 places in Germany, in Berlin, Dresden, and Mannheim, and looked into the drinking patterns of a couple hundred of normal social drinkers. And we did this by an app that asked you on just each day, you get this question: how much did you drink today? So it was a kind of real-time drinking interview, very different to a retrospective. Yeah, usually the interviews, they are always, how much did you drink last week or in the last month or in the last year, which is not that easy to give here really correct answers. You very often get not the best results of that. This real-time drinking pattern asked by an app, how we did it, was fascinating by seeing that we got really one baseline drinking from Monday till Friday, and then there was this peak Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday, back to baseline. So there was always this weekend peak, and this is a typical drinking pattern, understandable. I mean, you don't want to drink a lot of alcohol during weekdays, during when you have to go to work, and you're in a more relaxed mood when you have the weekend. But it was fascinating to see this. These are real data. And we did this also in the context of Corona and of the different lockdowns to see how that would affect drinking patterns of normal social drinkers. There is no clear message. There are clusters. There are people where the Corona lockdowns led in let's say 1/3 of the people to really, they almost stopped drinking. Others just continued as they did before. And there was one cluster that showed higher drinking. So it's not that this lockdown situation, which has a lot of psychological effects, would give a harmonized reaction patterns on drinking. To have different clusters here.
Got it. Yeah, and maybe just for myself, because I myself am a product actually of alcohol, because my dad and my mom told me they were drunk when they made me. So I think there can be also like cost on like families and all these stuff, but no one is counting that, I guess. But in terms of just like trying to quit, what do you think of maybe like a governmental level things? Like, for example, in certain countries, like when I lived in the Utah in the US, it's a state where they don't allow selling of alcohol. It's run by Mormon church, let's say. It's sort of like a Christian Christian religion, and there's no alcohol. You can't get it, and everybody's happy. Of course, everybody's part of the religion mostly. Same in Islam, in different countries where there's no alcohol and there's extreme punishment for even promoting alcohol or even being drunk. You can get drunk in your hotel room when no one sees you, but if you go outside, don't come with alcohol. What do you think of, like, it's not gonna work in Europe, this sort of thing, but like do you believe maybe the influence of some religion can help? Because that actually what helped me. I became more religious. And so because I couldn't fix myself, I couldn't figure it out, so I became more religious, and that sort of helped me. But I don't know, this is not for everybody, of course. So what do you think is, and on this like state level sort of regulations regarding alcohol?
On the state level, a lot can be done. First of all, it's always education. And we're not well educated about the harm, risks, and effects of drinking alcohol. So certainly we do think that we have some knowledge on that, but we are missing a lot of information. For example, most people do not know that the highest risk factor for having a risky drinking behavior and developing an alcohol use disorder problem, getting even addicted, is the first drink of intoxication, age of the first drink of intoxication, which means that if you get intoxicated at an age of 12, and intoxicated means you do not have a sip of beer from your father. It means, no, you get drunk, get really intoxicated. If that happens at an age of 12, you have the highest risk factor for having later on a problem. If you start drinking, or if you have your first intoxication with 18 or 19 years, you are much better off. First of all, this information is almost not, no one has this awareness of that. Even most doctors do not know that. So here comes the education package that is so much needed, and that has to be released to the schools, to the parents, to the public domain on all means and levels. We have to understand what is the genetic load on alcohol drinking, on risky alcohol drinking. We have to understand that if someone in our family has had or is having a problem, it can be an uncle, it can be your brother, it can be anyone from your relatives. If you see that, or if you see that several people in your family, in your larger family, do have a problem, you can be certain that you are having a genetic vulnerability to develop also a problem. You may not develop this problem, but if other factors, environmental factors, such as adverse life events, super stressful work condition, or whatever comes on top of that, that this results then in a risky drinking behavior and into an addiction. So I would say education is the most important thing on all levels. Another measure that comes now more and more into place is advertisement. I don't think that advertisement of alcoholic beverages should be really limited. Yeah. With these two measures, we can do something, and you can see that with smoking. How did the smoking behavior of the European population, at least in, let's say, countries like Germany, France, sorry about that. How I will start again.
Okay.
So in just compare it to our smoking habits that were totally different 20, 30 years ago, where people were smoking in the parliament, whereas people where even the pilot of an airplane was still smoking in the 70s, 80s. So it was just normal. And now look how we adjusted to a complete new situation. I mean, we have basically people who do smoke are discriminated. You could say they are even discriminated on all levels of our social life. So smoking is not that much accepted anymore, and it changed the overall smoking behavior of the population. You can measure this, and so I'm also positive that we can influence our drinking behavior. I think it should not disappear. We should not say, hey, don't drink alcohol anymore, and we better ban all alcoholic beverages. No, no. As I told you, it's part of our culture, and it would be simply impossible to do something like this. But we have to educate our people, and I think the industry, the wine industry, the beer industry, the spirit industry, they should also do that. They would be much better if they are proactive on this problem. If they are saying, hey, we sell this stuff, but please realize there are several things that you should consider. They would be better off. We will not change this completely, that it is part of our culture, but I think we can move it to a better, awareness in that will reduce also the problems all over.
I had a question about the link between addictive, let's say, alcohol behavior, and then on the other side, depression, anxiety, or ADHD as sort of like a psychological effects of this behavior. So as far as I know, alcohol is a depressant. So especially after you drink and you wake up the next morning, it lowers your mood, and it's not a great, let's say, state of mind. What can you tell us maybe about this link between alcohol addiction or addictive behavior together with this anxiety or depression or these
Yeah,
other psychological disorders?
we're talking here about so-called comorbidities of alcohol addiction. So other psychological disorders that come with excessive harmful alcohol consumption. The question is always, what is first? Is it that you were depressed and because of that used alcohol as an antidepressant drug, because for some people it works in the first place. I mean, it can change your mood state, but as you said correctly, it's usually an acute effect that helps you, and then on the day after it can be just worse. The same is with anxiety behavior, social anxiety. I mean, a lot of people do have social anxiety. So that means if they are invited for a party or a dinner, they feel not comfortable with the situation to be exposed to many other people who they may even not know that well. So alcohol can help here enormously, because we know that the social interaction is highly enhanced by acute alcohol consumption. So alcohol is used by many people as a kind of self-medication. ADHD as well. A lot of ADHD patients drink alcohol just to bring down some of their hyperactivity, etc. But it comes always with a cost. It can increase the day after the impulsivity level of those patients. So it is used as a self-medication very often because people do have psychological or psychiatric problems, and they use it just to get better along with these problems. So this is the self-medication part. But there is also the other part that if you drink alcohol, a lot of psychological problems develop along with the alcohol drinking. For example, you, especially the day after, you in an abstinence state or in a withdrawal state, you are very anxious. You are hyper reactive to any stressor. Yeah? You cannot cope that well with any stress. So it comes in both directions, and we do have here different clusters of people and patients. You cannot say that excessive alcohol drinking or alcohol use disorder is inducing in patients anxiety related behavior or depressive behavior. In some it does, in others it is used as a self-medication, and others it does not come. So again, it is a complex outcome. It can come in all phases and in combinations, but clearly the comorbidities, this is something that is always of where we should be aware of, that those comorbidities may come along with your alcohol drinking behavior, that you get depressed or that you develop more impulsive behavior, etc.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And in terms of maybe long-term neurobiological consequences of this, let's say, binge drinking, especially coming from adolescents, I know you've mentioned cancer maybe and some other things, but is there anything else that people should know about these long-term effects?
Oh yeah, there are persistent effects. If you drink alcohol and at a young age, it will change on many system levels your brain functioning. So that changes on a synaptic level, that changes on a molecular level, on a neuronal activity level, on a network level, and these effects are persistent. That means it is not that you drink alcohol excessively, you are 15 years old, and you're fine with it. No, it will accompany you for the rest of your life. Especially if you develop at a certain age an alcohol use disorder problem, or even that you get really addicted to it as an end state, you can go then, if you go through treatment and if you're really well motivated, you can go into abstinence, and you can go into long-term abstinence, but your brain is different and you will remain addicted for the rest of your life. That will not change, because even after years of abstinence, it is so easy to relapse. It can just happen from one day to another that your old drinking behavior that you had 20 years before will come again within a few days. So you have persistent long-term changes in the brain on all levels, on the molecular level, on the brain activity level, and this results in a lifelong problem that you have to live with. We don't have the magic bullet at the moment, so a treatment that brings you back to zero, to normality. We have good treatment programs on psychological intervention. Also, we do have some pharma medical instruments that can help us, but to restore this to normality, to zero, to baseline, that's not possible, at least not today, and I have some doubts that this will be possible in the future.
Right. Yeah, that's probably I should be careful about this, because I think I started at 13, so I'm sure I'm wired some way in my brain, but hopefully I'll manage. We'll see. So yeah, thank you so much for stopping by. I think this was very beneficial to have you explain all these things related to alcohol addiction, and we'd be very happy to stay in touch with you, and hopefully everybody can. Do you have any email or any sort of way of contacting you if somebody wants to ask you a question, or maybe about this topic?
Yeah, sure. You can just use my email, which you do have, that you can use in this podcast you're making. And I get hundreds of emails. I'm not from people who do have questions and problems. I try to help and to advise whenever I can, and I'm happy to do so. Also for whoever wants to have such an advice. So yeah, you can use my email. I don't have a problem with that. And it would be good if you could send me the link to the podcast you're making.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Yeah, I will send it to you and you can share it. And then if somebody's listening, feel free to look at the description. There will be the email of Dr. Spanagel, so maybe you can reach out to him. But thank you again for stopping by, and I hope to stay in touch with you.
Yeah, okay, thank you.